Position.
Joining us live in studio, Lesego Maris, ANC Youth League NEC member, Tsepo Khadima, political analyst, and we also have Lakite Gisho, Transform RSA Deputy President, Professor Beri Hanyane, political analyst. Also joining us, he's a professor with the Northwest University. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us, and good evening to you. Just a reaction from the ANC and how this matter is being handled. It seems very haphazard, reactionary, waiting for yet another public criticism of the party. Is this the only other way that the ANC can deal with this matter?
No, I don't think it's the only other way. I think ourselves as the ANC Youth League, we've been calling on the ANC to institute disciplinary measures for ill-disciplined members of the ANC. So the only way that the ANC must deal is to start to implement its policies. And one of the policies of the ANC is a committee called the Disciplinary Committee. We can't have these committees that are not executing its work.
I mean, the ANC is not in a good position now to have leaders, especially, making such serious allegations of assassinations and associating these with the party that they serve. Mr. Khadima, your view and exactly what is at play here?
It would appear to us that the African National Congress, by and large, is attempting to write a new standard in political governance. There is no political party anywhere in the world where the leaders of such a political party can make accusations through innuendo and conjecture as the leaders of the African National Congress are currently doing. Be those that are deployed in parliament, such as Dr. Khoza, be people like who chairs the disciplinary committee of the African National Congress, Derek Hanekom, former Minister of Finance, who's now an ordinary MP, Pravin Gordhan, who we hear that a rumor that he might be tendering his resignation on the 8th after voting. And I don't know what's going to happen if there is no voting on the 8th, if he will then stay on and postpone. But the point I'm making is this. In trying to hold course in their conduct, which most certainly is so it offends everything good governance. But in trying to justify it, they fail to adduce any evidence, any case studies of any other organization that they know of. Because if they were to do so, then most certainly I think that they would stand to be believed. Now, if they are so offended by what the ANC is doing and the leadership, because the leadership of the ANC comes through electoral processes, and they know the timeline of those electoral processes or the interventions, the very next opportunities now in December, they've got one or two options. It's either that they leave or they stay the course and do what is done in any other organization. Now let's take it into corporate sector, for example. Just imagine if there was to be one of the directors on the board of Remgro, which is chaired by none other than Johan Rupert, who was to do exactly what people like Khoza is doing, who is being, by the way, applauded by people in the corporate sector, who will never allow such conduct on their own board because the consequences on the enterprise, on the company, will be so dire that it can drive the company into bankruptcy, that they would have to act. The question, therefore, is, what is this thing that is constraining the ANC from acting, because it is the ANC that is suffering, and no other organization, by the way, has ever done that. So in attempting this mission impossible, the question that we are asking is that for how long will the African National Congress leadership attempt to be the producers of a new Mission Impossible movie?
And I mean, just on the basis, like you're saying, Tsepo, of the code of ethics, when you join an organization, there's guidelines you inducted into how you ought to carry yourself in the name of that organization. Yet we seem to applaud those that go outside the structure, that even confine ourselves in our own private spaces. Why do you think in this case the ANC hasn't reacted, Retekish?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that she's way out of line in terms of the code of conduct of the ANC and the constitution of the ANC. But I think the ANC as well is taking long to act, in terms of ensuring that they the members of the ANC must comply with the constitution and the disciplinary code of the ANC. And I think that might be a problem, because you cannot leave a member that is publicly undermining you for everyone to see for so long without acting. Because the more you do that, you create this thing that people must undermine the organization. So we're saying that the ANC should have acted long ago, but the ANC can still act with regard to what is happening currently and ensure that this thing must stop immediately.
And I mean, the nefarious charges as well, the sense that this is orchestrated by the ANC leadership against her, Dr. Khoza, and her family. The police are not acting because of obvious reasons, that she is being critical of President Jacob Zuma, essentially saying that the entire ANC has lost its relevance, and the voices, the dissenting voices that we hear are the altruistic members of the ANC. Those are the ones that are upholding the Constitution. How do you bring the narrative back, or the focus back, to the ideologies and the principles of the ANC?
I think she's misleading, firstly. She's seriously misleading in a sense to say that ANC has got its policies. And the ANC is one organization that is against crime. That is why when we go to our conferences, we've got our commissions that speaks to peace and stability, you know. And the ANC constitution is very clear that members must be free. Free in a sense that we must allow them to participate, we must be tolerant. And now, the problem that I'm having is that when there's any against you, you start with registering a case with the police. You take the law enforcement into confidence. Secondly, the narrative that individuals who might like you, who might not like you, must be attributed to the ANC. The ANC is not an individual. So it is very incorrect to be attacked, threatened, and to name the ANC as your attacker. It's ill-discipline, and it brings the ANC into disrepute.
No, and in this case, in her latest post, she had referred to the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, questioning the legitimacy of its leadership there and refusing to subject herself to disciplinary hearing. Tsepo, it's a dilemma that the ANC is facing at the moment in how to deal with this matter.
Look, I don't think that Dr. Makosi Khoza can be regarded to be genuinely wanting to see the good come out of this whole morass. And she cannot be regarded that she's somebody who genuinely cares for the African National Congress. Let me put it this way, Cindy. If you want to go to London from here, if I find you at Johannesburg Central Station waiting for a train, then I will worry, I will need to maybe refer you to a psychiatrist. Because if you want to go to London, you'll be at OR Tambo, not at Central Station. If you want to change the ANC and you are a member of the ANC, you cook the rice in the pot. If you go and you post something on Facebook and on social media attempting that you can bring about change, you are no different from a lunatic who will be sitting at Johannesburg Central Station with an air ticket to London instead of being at the airport. You'll never go anywhere. And that's the effect of what Dr. Makosi Khoza is doing. If you are an insider and you've got that privilege, you've got structures from within which you can be able to raise such issues. Now, I go back again to the point that I was making earlier. And the reason why I use Remgro, by the way, is very specific. Just this past week, we saw the Guardian newspaper out of the UK writing a story about Remgro, and in terms of effectively one of its key investment, British American Tobacco, on how it has undermined each and every single authority in Africa where it's got operations in tobacco. Now imagine if a director of BAT was now to stand up on the podium and say this organization has even been written about, that it is, first and foremost it's selling illicit products that are destroying the lives of people, and over and above that is not paying tax. How many minutes do you think that such person will remain a director of Remgro? The answer is that no, such a person will never even see the light of day. Such will not be tolerated, because in any organization there is a decorum, there is a protocol, that has to be followed. The question, as I'm saying, which is puzzling probably mainly to ordinary members of the ANC, that they must be in a great deal of pain, is that why is there perhaps maybe an attempt to write a new way of doing things that has never been tested, let alone has not been effectively investigated to see can it yield the results. The question is this: they haven't even worked out as to such attacks from within, what will they eventuate in come 2019 or come even the next election? And by not doing that, by the way, I'm saying here, the failure we are seeing here is the top leadership of the African National Congress, by themselves even tolerating amongst themselves within the NEC mutineers. Effectively, you've got people who are having mutiny. No army anywhere in the world that ever tolerated mutiny has ever been able to win a battle, let alone a war. How is the ANC expecting to win the elections when it's got so many mutineers that it is tolerating? If anything, it wants to give them even more dangerous weapons that effectively, you know, they can bomb their own platoon.
Let's invite Professor Barry Hanyane. Thanks for your patience. He's a political analyst and is at the University of the Northwest. Good evening to you, Professor Hanyane. Are you in agreement? Because this is the sentiment from ANC spokesperson Zizigodwa, saying that there seems to be a conscious decision or orchestrated attempt or plot to destroy the ANC before certain disgruntled members leave.
Good evening, Cindy. Good evening to your panelists there. Look, I think we need to be careful when we deal with such things. For starters, I hold the view that we need to respond to this from an analysis point of view, as looking at Dr. Khoza first as a citizen of the country and the person that she is. Secondly, as an ANC member. And thirdly, as an ANC caucus member. Now, the question should be asked, in all platforms that she has stood up in the name of registering her conscious views, which of the three Dr. Khoza are we dealing with? Are we dealing with Khoza, the person who has the right and the capacity to think and articulate her very own independent thoughts? Or are we dealing with Dr. Khoza, an ANC branch/provincial member, or are we dealing with Dr. Khoza, the ANC caucus party member? So all of these three hats should not be confused. And I think this is an important point of conjuncture if, of course, we have to deal with this whole debacle as it unfolds.
I think, sorry to interrupt you, Professor Hanyane, but let's just look at the principle of how she was there in the first place and not, taking away her credentials and her achievements. The fact of the matter, she is there on a party ticket, and there is certain decorum or expectation and a framework or even code of conduct that you are bound by, okay? And surely there must be some restrictions as to what you can do, because the impact is very negative on that very party she serves.
Cindy, you're talking about an unwritten rule that should then, of course, have a bearing or influence on her behavior. Unless if otherwise, if party policy does dictate openly that certain behavior should then be classified as political unethical, then of course you have grounds to deem her behavior as unacceptable. In this instance, I think it speaks to nothing else but the gray area in which party policies have failed in this country to respond to what would be otherwise a behavior that transcends the three areas that I've mentioned. And I take note of the fact that the categorization of her behavior as that of a mutineer may very well be applied here in the analysis. I don't hold that view. And as I said earlier, I think we're dealing with a person who's wearing three hats. And perhaps for the first time in the history of the African National Congress, we have in this instance a direct questioning of what happens to passive politics and what happens in this instance to the principle of centralized democracy.
All right, so let's get a reaction.
No, thank you. I think, firstly, I would want to say, yes, the Constitution is very clear that it entitles her to certain rights that she has, right? Your Section 11, your Section 12 and 16, freedom of expression and all of that. But what is key to us as Transform RSA is really her safety. You know, with regard to what Prof have said, I differ with respect, because correctly stated by my friend over here is to say there's an organization that has rules and regulations, and she's one of the members of that organization, and therefore she has to work within the collective of that organization. There's no way that you can be an ANC there and you can be a member there and so on and so on. What she did and what she's currently doing, she's doing having the head of an ANC member. You understand? So if she's doing that, it's very clear that she needs to be able to then confine within the policies and the principles of the ANC, how it values itself, its members and all of that. But what is critical to us obviously should be that she must be protected, even if we don't agree with the views, you know, and most of these other things will be done by the organization there, the political organization that will deal with other issues. But the issue that we are worried about is really her security, and perhaps that's what we must be able to deal with, and we think that perhaps that is an issue that we must discuss.
Yeah.
But is it a credible threat that her life is threatened? I mean, we don't know. But the burden of actually showing and demonstrating that indeed it is a credible threat first is upon the person who is receiving such threats, and to take active measures within the criminal justice system, within the rule of law, to actually seek protection. And she has failed, by the way. In fact, she refuses to engage with the South African police. By the way, minister is a political authority, but the police have to act in terms of the Constitution and the Criminal Procedure Act. So it cannot be correct that the police will now listen to Minister Mbalula as a member of the ANC and now fail to carry out their lawful duty as so contained in the Criminal Procedure Act.
Just in terms of the policies being implemented.
Apart from that, the NEC has got functions. And one of the functions of the ANC is to institute directives to its members. The comrade, in her own right, has joined the organization voluntarily, has signed a form where she obliged that she'll be formed with the aims of and objective, the policy and the constitution of the organization. So it can't be when an empowered structure like the NEC is given the right to execute a function. For example, says we are not going to have a vote in ballot, and she goes outside the confines of the institution. So the professor also must not come and mislead people. We are very clear, the ANC is very clear on how you should conduct yourself as members of the ANC. That is why in Mangaung 2012, issues of disciplinary went forward to even those who are public bearers to be treated like each and every member, because prior to that, the branch could not, for example, charge a councillor. But it was changed to say, no, the branch can charge the councillor, but there is a way they must do. They must inform the PwC of the intention to charge, because public servants were seen as special. So Mangaung helped us with that issue. So it can't be that Mama Makosi Khoza is going to be immune from organizational discipline. So the professor must not mislead us in terms of the ANC does not have clear regulations on how to move.
Yeah, it should be this a provincial thing in how it's handled, very briefly, as opposed to wanting a voice necessary from Luthuli House, or should they also have a say?
Yes, they should. Because remember, she's from KZN, and she has been deployed by KZN to Parliament, but via the NEC, because of course there was a national list where the KZN has ensured that she become part of that. So she is a member from KZN, but of course she must work hand in hand with a national structure in order for them to deal with that.
We're going to have to leave it there. Khoza Meres, ANC Youth League NEC member, like Kitekisho Transform RSA Deputy President, Tsepo Khadima, thank you so much, and Professor Barry Hanyane, also a political analyst and a professor with the University of the Northwest. Thanks for watching. We're back after this.